Robert worked for 41 years. Not 41 years of coasting. 41 years of showing up, of performance reviews, of company picnics, of watching colleagues come and go, of adapting to new management and new systems and new expectations. He was an operations manager for most of his career, reliable and competent, the kind of person every company needs and most companies take for granted. He retired at 66 with the quiet dignity of someone who had done what was expected of him for a very long time. At his retirement party, people said he deserved to relax. His wife cried a little. His adult children flew in. There was cake. 6 months later, Robert sat at his kitchen table with a legal pad and wrote down the actual numbers for the first time in his life. Not the approximate numbers he had carried in his head for decades. The actual ones. His 401k had $164,000. His Social Security benefit was $1,840 per month. He had $14,000 in a savings account. His house was paid off, that was the good news. His monthly expenses, which he had never tracked precisely during his working years, turned out to be approximately $3,900 per month when he wrote them all down. He stared at the legal pad for a long time. His Social Security covered $1,840 of the $3,900. The remaining $2,060 per month had to come from his $164,000 in savings. At that draw rate, his savings would last approximately 6.5 years. He was 66. He would statistically live into his early 80s. The math had a gap of roughly a decade in it. Robert had not been irresponsible. He had not been reckless. He had done, broadly, what he understood he was supposed to do. He had just never sat down with the actual numbers at a moment when the numbers still had time to change. Now I want to tell you about his neighbor, Frank. Frank retired the same year at 64, 2 years earlier. He had worked similar jobs for a similar duration at a similar income level. The external details of their careers were nearly identical. But Frank had done one thing differently, starting in his early 40s, that changed the entire shape of his retirement. He knew the number. Not approximately. He had calculated, updated annually, and built a plan around the specific dollar figure that represented genuine retirement security for his specific life. He retired with $580,000 in investment accounts, a $2,100 monthly Social Security benefit, and a monthly expense load he had designed deliberately to be $3,200, covered almost entirely by Social Security plus a modest, sustainable draw from his portfolio that his projections suggested would last well past his life expectancy. Same career era. Same general income trajectory. 41 years of work versus 38. Frank retired earlier with 3.5 times the savings. The difference was not what he earned. It was what he knew, and when he started knowing it. Pause. Music fades in softly. This isn't about how much you've saved. It's about understanding what the average American actually retires with, the real number, not the aspirational one, and what that number means for whether your current financial trajectory will produce the retirement you're imagining or something significantly more difficult than you're prepared for. I'm going to show you the real rules of retirement readiness in 2026, what the data actually says about how people arrive at retirement, why the average numbers are so much lower than most people expect, what the specific gaps are between average outcomes and adequate ones, and the precise calculations that will tell you, with honesty, whether you're on a path to Frank's retirement or Robert's. These are the numbers and the frameworks that most people don't encounter until it's too late to meaningfully change the outcome. Understanding them now, at whatever age you're watching this, is one of the most financially consequential things you can do. Transition to core content. Rule 1. The average American retires with far less than you think, and the number is so low that hearing it should permanently change how you feel about your own savings urgency. Let's start with the actual data, because the numbers are the point of this entire conversation. According to the most recent Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances and supplementary research from Vanguard, Fidelity, and the Employee Benefit Research Institute, the median retirement account balance for Americans aged 65 to 74 is approximately $87,000. Not the average, the median. the figure that represents the exact middle of the distribution, where half of people have more and half have less. The average, which is skewed significantly upward by high balance outliers, is approximately $232,000 for the same age group. The gap between the median and the average tells you something important. A relatively small number of people with very large balances are pulling the average up substantially, while the typical person at retirement age is sitting with $87,000. Robert's $164,000 puts him above the median. Most people would consider that a success story compared to the average. The legal pad calculation showed him it wasn't. But here's what most people miss. These numbers represent people who have retirement accounts. Approximately 45% of Americans approaching retirement age have no retirement savings at all, zero. When you include them in the full population calculation, the median drops to approximately $87,000 for account holders and considerably less for the full population. The number that should anchor your thinking is this. The median retirement-aged American has approximately 3 to 5 years of modest living expenses saved in investment accounts. Not 30 years of retirement income. 3 to 5 years. The rest of their retirement income, for the median American, depends almost entirely on Social Security. Rule 2. Social Security was never designed to be your primary retirement income, but for the majority of Americans, it functions as exactly that. Social Security replaces approximately 40% of pre-retirement income for median earners. Financial planning guidelines generally suggest you need 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement income to maintain your standard of living in retirement. The gap between 40% replacement and 70% target is the gap that personal savings are supposed to fill. When personal savings are insufficient to fill that gap, which, given the numbers in Rule 1, is the situation most people find themselves in, retirement means living on significantly less than pre-retirement income. For someone earning $60,000 before retirement, Social Security replaces approximately $24,000 per year. The target retirement income at 70% replacement is $42,000 per year. The $18,000 annual gap has to come from somewhere. If it doesn't come from personal savings, it comes from reduced living standards, continued work, family support, or some combination of all three. Here's the real-world impact. Robert's $1,840 monthly Social Security benefit is $22,080 per year. His expenses are $46,800 per year. His savings gap is $24,720 annually. His $164,000 in savings, at that draw rate, runs out in approximately 6.6 years. At 73, Robert's savings are gone. He is living entirely on Social Security, $1,840 per month, while his expenses are $3,900 per month. The math requires either drastically reduced expenses, family financial assistance, or continued work, none of which was the retirement he imagined at that party where people told him he deserved to relax. Rule 3. The retirement savings benchmarks most people quote are aspirational, and most people are so far from them that quoting them without context does more harm than good. You may have heard the common benchmarks: have 1 times your salary saved by 30, 3 times by 40, 6 times by 50, 8 times by 60, 10 times by 67. These are Fidelity's guidelines, and they represent reasonable targets for someone who has been saving consistently from their mid-20s. The median American is nowhere near these benchmarks at any age. Median retirement savings for people in their 40s is approximately $27,000. The benchmark for a 40-year-old earning $60,000 is $180,000. The typical 40-year-old is at 15% of where the benchmark says they should be. For people in their 50s, the median is approximately $57,000. The benchmark for a 50-year-old earning $65,000 is $390,000. The typical 50-year-old is at 15% of benchmark. The benchmarks are not wrong. They represent what's actually needed for a secure retirement. But the gap between where most people are and where these benchmarks say they should be is so large that many people encounter the benchmarks, feel overwhelmed, and disengage from retirement planning entirely rather than making the incremental improvements that are still available to them. This is the specific psychological danger of benchmark comparison without context. The person who is $150,000 behind a benchmark may still be able to meaningfully improve their retirement outcome by taking specific actions, but if the benchmark comparison produces paralysis rather than action, the comparison has made their situation worse rather than better. Frank encountered these benchmarks at 42. He was behind them. He did not disengage. He calculated what he could actually build from his actual starting point with his actual income and designed a realistic plan that was better than the median even if it didn't reach the benchmark ideals. He executed the realistic plan. Robert encountered the same information and found it discouraging enough that he filed it away without acting on it. Rule 4. The retirement income gap is larger than most people calculate because they underestimate their expenses and overestimate how much their lifestyle will shrink. Most people approaching retirement assume their expenses will decrease significantly when they stop working. No more commuting costs. No more work wardrobe. No more packed lunches or work dinners. The logic seems sound. The reality is more complicated. Research on retirement spending patterns consistently shows that expenses in early retirement, the first 10 to 15 years, are often higher than pre-retirement expenses, not lower. This is because early retirement is typically active retirement. Travel happens. Hobbies get funded. Healthcare costs begin their long upward trajectory. Home maintenance, which was previously deferred, gets addressed. Family support, helping adult children, assisting aging parents, often accelerates in early retirement when time becomes available. Expenses typically decline in middle retirement, approximately 75 to 85, as mobility decreases and activity levels moderate. They can spike again in late retirement as healthcare and long-term care costs increase substantially. The planning assumption of dramatically reduced retirement expenses is one of the most costly miscalculations available. Robert assumed his retirement would cost $3,000 per month. He discovered, on that legal pad, that his actual current monthly costs were $3,900. The $900 monthly underestimate produced a retirement projection that was 23% more optimistic than his reality. Across a 20-year retirement, that $900 monthly underestimate is $216,000 in unplanned expenses. The rule is to calculate retirement expenses from your actual current expenses, adjusted for the specific changes you can concretely identify, rather than from an assumption about how much simpler your life will become. Rule 5. Healthcare is the retirement expense that almost no retirement plan adequately accounts for, and the numbers are large enough to change retirement timelines significantly. Fidelity's annual estimate of healthcare costs in retirement for a 65-year-old couple is approximately $315,000 in out-of-pocket costs across a typical retirement horizon. That figure includes Medicare premiums, supplemental insurance, prescription costs, dental, vision, and out-of-pocket medical expenses, but excludes long-term care costs, which represent an additional potential liability that can run $50,000 to $100,000 per year or more. The $315,000 figure is an average. For people with significant health conditions or who live into their late 80s, the number is considerably higher. Robert did not plan for $315,000 in healthcare costs. He did not plan for healthcare costs specifically at all. He assumed Medicare would cover what he needed and that the premiums would be manageable. He is discovering, in year 2 of retirement, that Medicare Part B premiums, a supplemental Medigap policy, and his ongoing prescription costs run approximately $680 per month. A fixed expense that did not appear in his mental model of retirement costs when he was still working. That $680 per month is $8,160 per year. Over a 20-year retirement, it is $163,200, a figure that must come from somewhere and was not included in his $164,000 savings balance calculation. The numbers overlap in a way that produces a retirement that is functionally less secure than it appeared from the outside. Frank's retirement plan included an explicit healthcare reserve and a Medigap premium estimate that he had actually obtained from an insurance broker before retiring. He knew what his healthcare would cost before it arrived as a bill. Rule 6. The sequence of investment returns in the first decade of retirement matters more than the average return over the full retirement, and most people have never heard of this risk. Sequence of returns risk is one of the most important and least understood concepts in retirement planning. It refers to the danger that a significant market decline in the early years of retirement, when you are drawing down your portfolio, will permanently impair your retirement savings in a way that a decline at a later stage would not. Here is why it matters. If your portfolio declines 30% in year 2 of retirement while you are simultaneously withdrawing 4% per year to cover living expenses, the combined effect of market decline and withdrawal leaves you with a significantly smaller base to recover from. The subsequent market recovery that restores other investors to their pre-decline position does not restore you to the same relative standing. Because you were selling assets during the decline to fund expenses, and those sold assets do not benefit from the recovery. A 30% market decline in year 2 of a 30-year retirement with a 4% withdrawal rate has been shown in historical modeling to increase the probability of portfolio exhaustion, significantly compared to the same decline occurring in year 20. The practical implication is that the portfolio you carry into retirement, its size, its allocation, and the presence or absence of a near-term cash buffer, should be designed with the specific awareness that the first decade of retirement carries this asymmetric risk. A 2 to 3 year cash buffer of non-invested funds can allow you to avoid selling invested assets during a market decline, giving the portfolio time to recover before you resume drawing from it. Neither Robert nor the average American approaching retirement has this buffer. They have one account from which they draw regularly, with no mechanism for managing the timing of withdrawals relative to market conditions. Rule 7. Working 2 to 3 years longer than you planned has a disproportionate impact on your retirement security, and most people underestimate this leverage dramatically. This rule contains the most actionable and highest impact information in this entire video for people who are 5 to 15 years from retirement. Working 2 to 3 additional years beyond your planned retirement date does 3 things simultaneously. It adds 2 to 3 years of contributions to your retirement account. It removes 2 to 3 years of withdrawals from your retirement account. And it allows your existing balance 2 to 3 more years of uninterrupted compounding. Here is what this looks like with real numbers. A person with $300,000 in their retirement account at 62, planning to retire at 65, adds approximately $180,000 in combined contributions and compounding during those 3 additional years at a 7% return. Simultaneously, they don't withdraw the approximately $72,000 they would have drawn over those 3 years. The net effect of the 3-year delay is a portfolio that is approximately $252,000 larger when they do retire, more than 80% larger than the balance they started with at 62. I'm not done yet. Delaying Social Security from 62 to 67 increases your monthly benefit by approximately 43%. Delaying from 67 to 70 adds another 24%. The person who claims Social Security at 62 receives $1,400 per month. The person who waits until 70 receives approximately $2,480 per month for life, indexed to inflation. The lifetime cumulative difference for someone who lives to 85 is often $100,000 or more in total Social Security income. Frank worked until 64 rather than 62, delayed Social Security until 68, and the combined effect of those decisions added approximately $340,000 in lifetime retirement resources compared to the early retirement and early claiming scenario. Rule 8. Most people don't know their retirement number, the specific dollar amount that represents genuine financial independence, and not knowing it is the primary reason they arrive at retirement unprepared. This rule is about the planning gap that separates Frank from Robert more than any other. Robert never calculated his number. He had a vague sense that having more savings would be better, and he contributed to his 401k at a moderate rate for most of his career. But he never worked backward from a specific retirement income target to determine how much he actually needed to save. Without the number, there was no way to know whether he was on track, and without knowing whether he was on track, there was no urgency to accelerate. The number is not mysterious. The calculation has three inputs: your expected annual retirement expenses, your expected Social Security benefit, and the amount your portfolio needs to generate annually to fill the gap, which, at a 4% withdrawal rate, determines your required portfolio size. If your annual retirement expenses are $48,000 and your Social Security benefit is $24,000, your portfolio needs to generate $24,000 per year. At a 4% withdrawal rate, a portfolio of $600,000 generates $24,000 annually. Your number is $600,000. That number, once known, creates a specific, trackable target. You can calculate whether you're on pace to hit it. You can determine whether accelerating contributions would close a gap. You can model the impact of working 2 additional years or delaying Social Security. The number makes all of these calculations possible. Without it, everything is guesswork expressed as hope. Robert's number, had he calculated it at 45, was approximately $520,000. He had 21 years to build toward it. He ended up with $164,000. With the number known and 21 years of directed saving, the outcome would have been different. The number wasn't difficult to reach. It was never identified clearly enough to build toward. Rule 9. The retirement savings vehicles available to you in 2026 offer tax advantages so significant that not maximizing them is equivalent to voluntarily paying a tax you don't owe. This rule is about the specific tools available and the specific cost of not using them. A person earning $75,000 who contributes $23,500 to a traditional 401k in 2026, the current contribution limit, reduces their taxable income by $23,500. At a 22% federal tax rate, that contribution saves approximately $5,170 in federal taxes in that year alone. The $5,170 doesn't disappear. It goes into the account rather than to the government. Over 20 years of maxing contributions, the annual tax savings alone, invested and compounded, represents a significant additional account balance beyond the contributions themselves. People 50 and older can contribute an additional $7,500 as a catch-up contribution, for a total of $31,000 per year. This catch-up provision exists specifically because the government recognizes that many people arrive at their 50s behind their retirement targets and need an accelerated mechanism to close the gap. But here's what most people miss. The average 401k contribution rate in America is approximately 7% of salary. At a $60,000 salary, that is $4,200 per year, $19,300 less than the current maximum. The person contributing 7% is leaving $19,300 per year in tax advantage space unused and foregoing the tax savings on that amount. Over 20 years, the difference between 7% contributions and maximum contributions, accounting for tax savings, compounding, and employer matches, can exceed $400,000 in total retirement resources. The contribution maximum is not designed for wealthy people. It is designed for people who want to retire securely. Most people use a fraction of it. Rule 10, where you retire and how you structure your withdrawals can extend your retirement savings by years, and most people make both decisions by default rather than by design. Geographic arbitrage, the decision to retire in a lower cost of living location, is one of the most powerful and least discussed levers available to people approaching retirement with insufficient savings. A retirement that requires $48,000 per year in a high cost of living city might require only $34,000 per year in a mid-sized city with lower housing, healthcare, and daily living costs. The $14,000 annual difference in required withdrawal is the equivalent of having $350,000 more in your portfolio at a 4% withdrawal rate. Moving to a lower-cost location can functionally add $350,000 to your retirement security without adding a dollar to your savings. Robert and his wife have lived in the same city for 40 years and have no plans to move. The social and emotional costs of relocation are real and legitimate. But the financial impact of not considering it is also real. Their $3,900 monthly expense load is substantially driven by their housing costs in a city where property taxes alone run $8,400 per year. In a different location, that cost structure looks significantly different. The withdrawal sequence decision, which accounts to draw from first, in what order, and in what amounts, is similarly consequential. Drawing from taxable accounts first while allowing tax-advantaged accounts to continue compounding, managing annual withdrawals to stay within favorable tax brackets, and timing Roth conversions during lower-income years can extend the life of a retirement portfolio by 3 to 5 years compared to an unplanned withdrawal strategy. 3 to 5 years of additional portfolio longevity is not a rounding error. It is the difference between running out of money at 80 and not running out of money at all. Rule 11. The average person's retirement is survivable but not comfortable, and understanding what survivable actually means reframes what you're trying to build. This is the rule that provides the clearest, honest context for everything that came before it. The average American retiree is not destitute. Social Security, for all its limitations, provides a real income floor. Medicare provides real healthcare coverage with real gaps. The paid-off home, which most retirement-aged Americans have, provides real housing security. The average retirement is survivable in the sense that people do survive it, maintain their health and dignity, and experience meaningful quality of life. It is not comfortable in the sense that most people imagine when they picture retirement. It does not include regular travel. It does not include significant discretionary spending on experiences, hobbies, or grandchildren. It does not include a financial cushion that makes unexpected expenses manageable rather than crisis-inducing. It is a retirement lived carefully, with constant awareness of what can and cannot be afforded, in which the margin for error is thin enough that a single significant medical event or family financial need can fundamentally destabilize the situation. Robert's retirement is survivable. He and his wife have adjusted. They travel locally rather than abroad. They have become careful about restaurants. They have not helped their adult children financially in the ways they had imagined doing when those children were small. They are fine. They are not what they pictured. Frank's retirement is comfortable. Not lavish. Not extraordinary. Comfortable, in the specific, daily, unremarkable way that financial security feels when it is present. He travels once per year. He eats without calculating. He helps his grandchildren. He does not check his account balance with anxiety. The gap between survivable and comfortable is measurable. It is the gap between Robert's $164,000 and Frank's $580,000. It is 41 years of similar careers producing dramatically different outcomes based on one variable. Frank knew his number. Robert never calculated it. Transition to closing. Robert and Frank were neighbors for 30 years. They watched their children grow up on the same street. They borrowed each other's tools. They attended the same neighborhood gatherings. From the outside, their lives looked approximately equivalent: similar houses, similar cars, similar modest professional careers that earned similar salaries over similar time horizons. The retirement party for Robert was lovely. Frank attended and said kind things and meant them. 6 months later, Frank is planning a trip to Portugal. Robert is sitting at a kitchen table with a legal pad. The gap between them was not created by extraordinary decisions or unusual sacrifice. Frank did not live a life of deprivation during his working years. He did not forego meaningful experiences or relationships in service of a savings rate that consumed everything enjoyable. He worked a similar number of hours at a similar pace and retired 2 years earlier than Robert on a financial position that was 3.5 times larger. The gap was created by one thing, applied over 30 years. Frank knew his number. He knew it at 42, updated it at 50, and built every major financial decision of his working life around the specific, calculated figure that represented security for his specific retirement vision. The number changed his contribution rate. The number changed his decision to delay Social Security. The number changed his choice to work until 64 rather than 62. The number made the abstract urgency of retirement saving concrete enough to act on consistently. Robert's retirement was shaped by intention. He intended to save more. He intended to figure it out. He intended to sit down with the numbers when things calmed down. Things never calmed down. The numbers were never calculated. The intention produced a legal pad at 66 rather than a trip to Portugal. If you are watching this, the legal pad moment hasn't arrived yet. The number is available to you right now. It takes 20 minutes to calculate. It requires only your expected annual retirement expenses, your projected Social Security benefit from SSA.gov, and a multiplication by 25. Robert's legal pad told him something he could no longer use. Your number, calculated today, tells you something you absolutely can. Go find it. OUTRO measured, calm, no rush. End card. If this video made you want to finally calculate your actual retirement number, the specific figure that tells you exactly what you're building toward, the next video walks through the exact calculation step by step with real numbers. For someone at every age from 30 to 60. Share this with one person who is still planning to figure out retirement later. Later has a way of becoming the legal pad.